So camera number one, we now have shutter and aperture rings which move smoothly. And looking at my list of problems with this camera, apart from the rattle, which we're not going to deal with immediately because I believe it's a loose screw in behind the shutter where you can't get to it, only leaves the adjustment of the rangefinder as the outstanding problem. Because the shutter works reasonably well, the meter works reasonably well, and this camera would be fit to use as it is probably. The rangefinder is not far off, but in the interest of getting it better, I'll open up the top of the camera and show you how I go about adjusting the rangefinder. So I'll open the back of the camera, something through the fork of the rewind, spin off the rewind knob, take off that little bush, and then we have 3 screws. One at this end of the top cover. That was just a small bird whacking off the window. They tend to do that. They're a bit crazy. And if I find the right screwdriver, we'll get these 2 screws out here. And lift off the top cover. I'll take off the button and its return spring, put them to one side, because when I'm handling the camera I don't want them falling off and getting lost. So the adjustments here, I'll zoom you in a bit and I'll show you which adjustments do which. Okay, so I'll get you turned to the light. Now we've got 2 sets of adjustments visible here. One here and one here. And make sure I get this right. This is the rangefinder adjustment. There's a lock screw and an adjustment screw here. The lock screw here, the adjustment screw here. This is the frames for the automatic frame finder. The adjustments there. Again, lock screw and adjustment screw. So this is what we're interested in here for our rangefinder adjustment. We're only looking to do the horizontal adjustment. And basically the problem with this camera is the images do not align at the infinity position when you're viewing an infinity target. So I just need to slacken off the lock screw slightly. And usually what I do is loosen it, then tighten it back up lightly so that it's not flopping about. And then here's my adjustment here. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to need to adjust this to the right or the left. I've turned it very slightly to the right and I'm going to check by looking out the window. That didn't do enough. That screw's quite tight. Now I'll try that now, it moved. That certainly moved it in the right direction. No, I think I've gone past it or I've gone in the wrong direction. Let's take that screw back the other way. That's very tight, that screw. Not sure what's with that. Right, now I've definitely overshot. And I'm coming back now to our 0 point, if you like. The adjustments on the Retina IIIS, like the 3 big C type cameras, is nowhere near as touchy as the 3 small C cameras. Oh, that looks like it. I think that's just about it. Now, to up the lock screw again, sometimes when you tighten the lock screw, it will shift. It'll shift the adjustment. And you'll have to do it again. But that's all good. I've got good alignment there. So that part's basically done. Now this camera would be quite usable as it is. I'm going to go in here later, strip this camera right down and clean and adjust everything. But if you were just wanting to adjust the rangefinder and just the horizontal adjustment was off, that was all you would need to do. Now I can see a bit of dust on the back here, so I'll just blow that away. I'm not going to clean any other surfaces in the viewfinder mechanism. And to put the screws back in, and this would be quite a usable camera, and it's certainly in better shape than what you would normally see described on eBay as in good working order, or even perfect working order, because people tell such awful lies on eBay. And so this camera would be ready to be put back in service. It's not as good as it'll be once I've given it a complete and full service, but it's a workable camera and one that would serve somebody well, and it's even in quite tidy condition. So that brings us on to the question of camera number 2. Now unfortunately, camera number 2, things didn't go as planned, and that's all I'm saying at the moment. We'll do the same job on the rings on this camera because it desperately needs it, and you'll see that it's pretty much identical. The only difference is the position, or the lack of the f1.9 numeral basically on the other camera. So same deal again. Set this to ASA 10. Set this to B, set the aperture to f1.9, and you're doing all this of course with no lens on the camera. Look closely at the position of your metered scale here. I'll just clean that so you can actually see it because it's pretty filthy. So what you're mostly interested in here is looking closely at the position of your follower needle and where it is relative to any marks or that you've got there. There's a little divot, a little white mark there. There's also one at the other end of the scale. Take great note of where that pointer is relative to that mark. That'll help you get things back together in the right place. Take note of the direction that this dial is running at the top too. You know, a large movement of this dial equates to a small movement of the yellow needle. So take note of both things. In fact, take a picture. So let's get the rings off the front of this. It's the same procedure except that this camera is dirtier and rougher. 3 screws. I don't even know what's jammed in that screw head. Some sort of valve. Now you may find the screws in this position have been locked with clear lacquer. That's not uncommon. If you find that, just a drop of acetone on each of those positions will sort you out. Right, let's lift these rings off. Well, you can see that that's pretty filthy in there, but we're not there to deal with that filth today. We've just got the 3 rings here, exactly the same. Let's get this apart. This is very sticky. This is why this was not moving smoothly. And again, we've got the tab through here, so I'm going to lift the other side up, away, and pull that out and disconnect the spring. And these components, I just need to give them a quick clean with naphtha, and then we'll lubricate them in the same way. I'll wipe the front face of that shutter because it's very sticky with graphite grease and dirt, and we'll put these back and see if it also fixed the problem. Well, with the front of the shutter somewhat cleaned up, it was pretty covered in dirt and graphite. Let's pop that to one side and just finish the last of cleaning this up. Now this front ring here, the front lip in particular, tends to gather up dirt. Some of that's probably graphite, some of it's probably just dust, and it's probably bound in a nasty mixture of finger grease and anything else you can think of. So I just want to get that rubbish out from that lip, so I'm just using the sharp end of a toothpick there. And I'll clean that front face. With luck, this one will go back together like the other one and work very smoothly. All of this, the surface is quite rough. This camera's had a very hard life, I'd say. Okay, get that filthy piece of paper away. Now I've got to get this spring back on that post. This is usually entertaining. So I'm using a wooden toothpick here to push that spring over the post. And it even worked. And we've got to get this ring back in place. This is the front. When you look down on the camera, you should see the numbers read correctly from the top. So around the other way. I need to hook the end of the spring in here. Now that end's closed up somewhat. I think this spring might be better on the other way around. Let me swap this. I'll just fight that string on the end and we'll pick up where we left off. Right, with only a minimum amount of struggle, I did get that back on. Let's put a bit of graphite powder in here to lubricate that. These rings were a bit knocked about, so all the surfaces are rough. So a little bit of lubrication is more important here than it was with the other one. I was going to blow that out. That's all moving smoothly. Okay, so where were we? Let's do this. Alright, so here's our shutter speed settings ring. Taking some molybdenum paste. You can use graphite grease, you can use whatever you've got. That notch in particular I'm interested in, and that smooth surface there. So checking that the shutter speed here is set in the B position, that all looks appropriate. Hook this into place. This ring here with the gear on it, I'll just run soft lead pencil around those two top surfaces. This was greased to death with graphite grease. Okay, so same deal. That edge has to come up against that pin. So rotate that, drop it into place. You've got to engage it with this little wheel here. And this piece drops in onto the notches on the shutter speed settings ring. Just checking that's all sitting correctly, it's all in place. Here's our front rings. Now here we have the f1.9 mark, which is handy because that's what we line up with the little diamond in the B there. So we drop this in place, having made sure that our meter settings haven't moved. And if we give this a bit of a wriggle, it should drop into position. Like that. Just checking that it's all sitting flush. And put the 3 screws back in place. And what we're most interested in finding out here is whether the front control rings now move smoothly and that the stiffness was all in the rings and nowhere else. I'll see if I can clean those screw heads slightly because they're pretty dirty. Okay, that part's together. Now what sort of a result have we got? Well, yeah, I'd say that was pretty much a success. Getting a lot of spring back here. That must be tension on the cord, I think. Right, well, I think that's probably correct. But I'm going to check that though. I'm not entirely happy with that. I think our meter may have moved on us. I'll take those rings off. We'll get this meter back exactly where it should be and put them back in place. I may have just rolled the body backwards and forwards on the table too much and moved things. Well, this was not my day. That meter cord is obviously broken. So this one was going to have to come apart anyway. But it was worth a go. At least you could see that the control rings themselves moved quite smoothly. Well, I've taken the top off camera number 2 and it looks like that the meter cord hasn't broken, but it's probably come off the rollers down at the bottom on the arm, and as a result it's not going to do anything useful until we've taken all this thing apart. So that being the case, and this camera being in this state already, I think I'll strip it the rest of the way down and we'll just have a little look. So I'll remove the meter. Now the meter, you can probably see there's a bit of discoloration there. That's where this plastic cover's been glued back on at a later date with a different adhesive. This is a bit dirty and grubby under here. I'm just checking the movement of this dial. It's a bit stiff, a bit gritty feeling, but it does move okay. Put that to one side. Our top cover, of course, is going to need a new plastic disc in here because that's never going to survive. But the camera body. Okay, we can lift off the shutter speed button, the shutter release button. The shutter release shaft can come out. That's got its own return spring. The film release button has its own return spring. It's longer than the one on the shutter. The rangefinder can probably come off at this stage. 2 fixing screws here and here. Need the appropriate screwdriver for that, I think. The rangefinder should lift out of the body. There we go. This is quite sticky. It was going to need to come apart anyway. It's certainly not moving smoothly. Carry on stripping the rest of this. This strap lug is quite bent. It means the camera's been dropped and that's hit the ground. Given the general state of this camera, that's probably not the only thing that's bent. Two screws on this strap plug. This bush is quite important. That supports the cocking rack here keeps it in contact with that little pinion on the top of the film advance. This plate holds the rack down, and here's the shutter cocking rack. These are different than the racks you'd see on the likes of a 3C. This rack is used on the Retina IIIS, the original Kodak Retina Reflex and the Retina Reflex S. I'll just take that single screw out and lift this chrome plate off the top. Two screws hold the rewind post in place. This is very sticky with dirt and dried grease. That certainly needs to come apart to be cleaned. And then we can strip down the film advance. I've got a screwdriver modified to fit the two notches in that screw at the top of the film advance. You can make one of those if you've got a Dremel or similar tool and a nice cheap screwdriver. So I'll just get all of these parts off. This is all very sticky and dirty, as you can see. I'll reclaim the screw from the top of that, the spring from the top of that screw, because easily lost in the cleaning process. I've got a bush and the little ratchet pull there and a single screw here, and that screw is loose. That wouldn't have been doing wonders for anything. Okay, what else can we take out? We can take that screw out and its spring. That's the release lever shaft. Releases the film advance to allow you to wind on to the next shot. And here, this is the lock lever. The lock lever's job is to block the action of the film advance once you've reached frame number 1. So I'll remove the spring from that and the little clip, and that's done. Turn my attention to the base of the camera, and here I need to start peeling leatherettes. So I need to find my scalpel. This leatherette patch is just about done. There's multiple layers of adhesive and corrosion on there. That screw's loose. That screw's loose. That one was just tight enough. This is all very dirty, as you can see in the rubber pad on the film advance lever's history. Two screws holding the tripod surround on, and this holds down the back catch cover. Here's the return spring for the back catch cover. and this piece is the back catch cover, and this is the back catch button. Okay, so the leatherette off the base. I don't know how well this will go. The adhesive may well soften with a bit of naphtha, or it might just peel up. With leatherettes as lumpy as this, the lumpy appearance could be down to two things. It could be that there's corrosion underneath the leatherette and you have the traditional Zeiss bumps, or it could be that there's multiple layers of adhesive and no one's taken the time to clean the stuff away. They've just put another layer on there when they've been servicing the camera. And I suspect that our problem here is multiple layers of adhesive. It looks to be sitting fairly flat there, and I think someone's just peeled up this bit and not stripped the rest off at some stage. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but that's what it looks like. Here I'm keeping the scalpel blade in firm contact with the camera body. I don't want the cutting edge rising up through the leatherette and cutting it. Okay, so there's our piece of leatherette, and as you can see, someone went crazy with the adhesive, which is just about what I expected. So this screws holding the chrome trim on the base plate here, and they'll need to come out. They're pretty well hidden in that glue. I think we have one here. We can excavate to it. Gather up those loose screws. Is it a full complement? I think so. It'll need some cleaning. Okay, so we can lift out the lock lever, the lever that locks the film advance, and lift out the release lever, the lever that releases this spring is on the end of that is mutilated. That was never going to last for long. It's going to need to be replaced, I would say. Okay, I want to get that off there. Normally I want to get them off there in one piece, but that's so bad I'm not sure I really do. That may not be an original spring. That looks a little bit awkward to me. I think that's something that someone has formed up, and that's ugly. That's terrible. I'm surprised it worked as well as it did. But there's our release lever. Okay, let's carry on with this. I think we'll have the shutter off the front of the camera next. So to do that, I need to lift the leatherettes. I think I'll use a bit of naphtha here to soften that adhesive. If I have to. Oh, that's coming away, I don't need to. Okay, so lift that up. I would say, just looking at the state of that was plyo bond adhesive someone's used there, which is not a common adhesive in this country. See if I can get the leatherette off on this side. It's quite stiff, the leatherette. Some of that is just age, and the stuff gets stiff and brittle with age. And some of it is the tremendous layer of adhesive that's stuck on the base of it, which is making it very stiff. And you can see it there, that's thick. Okay, so we've got 4 screws hold the front plate on. One of them is under that name tag. Now you can see that name tag doesn't sit down flush. It's sitting on a huge glob of glue, I would imagine.